Alrighty, welcome to this video, and today we're going to be having a yarn about these freaky looking things. So those are the Vibram 5-finger shoes. They are a style of barefoot, or also known as minimalist shoe. And so barefoot shoes have had a big rise in popularity in recent years. Basically the idea behind them is they allow you to get the feeling and the benefits of being barefoot while adding a bit of extra protection to your feet. And so today I want to discuss the pros and also the cons of these shoes, give you a clear understanding of how and why we would fit these into our training schedules or just day-to-day life, and whether or not they'll be a good fit for you. So I've made a video in the past detailing the benefits of training in bare feet. So you can check that video out, it's on my channel if you're interested. So in that video I go over the benefits that you can receive from training barefoot. So I'm not going to be going over those specific benefits in this video. This video is more about how we could fit this into our training schedule. So basically I'll give you a bit of context on my experience with these shoes. So I come from a personal training background. When I first started personal training, I was basically bodybuilding, powerlifting, doing calisthenics, and just wearing regular sneakers in the gym. And then about 10 or so years ago, I started training outdoors. I started getting into running, doing a bit of free running or parkour, and doing lots of different styles of training and doing this barefoot. So in this stage I was probably what you'd call a bit of a purist, sort of an all or nothing approach, and it was basically barefoot or nothing. Over the years I've tried out barefoot shoes, and I've gone back to trying other shoes that are also padded. So that's sort of my experience with these shoes so far. And so I'm going to detail how I fit these into my running schedule, and then also how I fit them into my gym training schedule and day-to-day life. So if that sounds like it'll benefit you, then let's get into the details. So I'll discuss now walking in these shoes, running in these shoes, and training in the gym in these shoes. And let's go over the pros and cons of these different scenarios. So let's start with walking. So the pros to walking in these shoes is, due to the nature of their design and their thin sole, we get immediate ground feedback. So the sensory receptors in our feet, they let off more powerful signals because we are closer to the ground. So even down to subtle details like walking down steps, for example, or we may be stepping off the curb from the pavement down to the road. If we're only accustomed to wearing padded footwear, generally we will land heavy on our heel. And if we do this once, it's not going to cause any issues. But we do this over a lifetime, we are sending unnecessary force and damage through our bodies. Now if we're wearing barefoot shoes, we will immediately feel that impact and it will feel uncomfortable. So it forces us to land lighter on our forefoot. So that's the pro of this scenario. Now on the flip side, the con of this is that most of us are not adapted to barefoot footwear. So if we are trying to regain or re-establish more efficient biomechanics, we need to do this slowly, because if we purely rely on them, then this can cause damage as we are trying to rebuild the strength necessary to be efficient. So it really comes down to a balancing act, and using these shoes to provide us the signals in how we need to adapt biomechanically, and then doing it in a safe enough setting so we're not overloading the body with too much new stimulus and allowing it to slowly adapt. So for an example, you could start by wearing these shoes in a nice safe setting, just walking about in them day to day in your home in a safe setting, and then wearing your regular padded footwear in all other scenarios. So that can be a nice starting point to start becoming aware biomechanically, like I said, how you are landing, how you are placing your foot, and how it's affecting the rest of your overall posture. Now we take this into a running context, and it's the same thing. So what I've found with these shoes is that in the early days I was a real purist and I was only running in these shoes, and there are pros and cons to this. So I feel as though it gave me a really efficient running stride. I gained really good technique through this because it was forcing me to land light on my feet. But because I'd grown up with padded footwear, my muscles and my tendons were weak, so I started getting injured purely relying on these shoes. And so once again it comes back to this balancing act. Using these shoes enough to become aware of our biomechanics, but then also using the technology and the benefits of padded footwear. So the way I do this is I will run anything from a short distance anaerobic speed session in the barefoot shoes right up to a long run, but I make sure that I do not do it too many days consecutively, otherwise I'll start to accumulate too much stress on the body. So basically I will wear barefoot shoes roughly 20 to 50% of my running training, and then the rest of the time I'll wear padded shoes to gain the benefits of the technology that padded footwear provides to give me a bit of extra speed and softer landing. Now in saying this, if I start to wear padded footwear for too long, I start going back to those lazy tendencies that happen from relying on padded footwear, and if I feel that my technique is getting sloppy, then I will use the barefoot shoes more frequently to re-establish that more efficient technique, and then there goes the balancing act. And in some instances, I will even go multiple weeks on end purely wearing barefoot shoes as a form of self-analysis and a little bit of experimenting and creating a deeper self-dialogue. So what I mean by this is that we can start asking ourselves certain questions to gain a deeper understanding of how we're interacting with our environment, how we are moving about day to day in certain contexts, such as walking, running, lifting weights, how we are balancing. And we can ask ourselves questions. So things like, how does my technique feel while wearing these barefoot shoes compared to my regular shoes? Or what areas of the body are becoming more fatigued while wearing barefoot shoes compared to other shoes? Like I said, how does my balance feel? How do the feet feel when balancing on different unstable objects or different undulating terrain? And also, how does the feedback feel through the ground? So when our sensory receptors are more ignited through the thinner soles of the barefoot shoes, what is this doing to our overall experience? What is this doing to our posture? How is this changing our interaction on a day-to-day basis and in a variety of movement contexts? And it may seem pretty straightforward. However, these simple questions are a great way to start to practice self-analysis and understanding where our strengths lie, where our weaknesses lie, and everything else in between. And this is just going to make up an overall deeper, more meaningful, and more effective long-term movement and health and wellness practice. Now, in a gym context, lifting weights, barefoot shoes are inherently stable. We get this immediate ground feedback. The shoes are nice and flat. They have a zero heel to toe drop, so that they are the same height in the heel as the forefoot. So doing lifts like deadlifts or squats, for example, are great in these shoes. They will also expose things like poor ankle mobility, for example. So if you have really stiff, immobile ankles, you will know about it because of this lack of heel to toe drop. So once again, you could chop and change between performing some of your lifts in barefoot or minimalist shoes, working on your ankle mobility, for example, if you need it, and then performing some lifts in shoes with a raised heel to still get some benefits out of your lifting routine. So it's always a case of a balancing act, using the shoes to realize movement deficiencies and then using the technology of padded footwear for your benefit. Now, another gym scenario where I really love using barefoot shoes is doing plyometric activities, because this really forces you to be efficient, landing on your forefoot and being really light and fleet-footed and agile. And I believe that practicing these kind of biomechanical movements just makes us a safer, more efficient mover in many different ways. So instead of just getting good at walking and running, we can train our balance, we can train our power, our change of direction, how we jump, how we land, and we can do it all in a safe gym setting to gradually and efficiently build up how our body moves. And so that really is, in a nutshell, how these shoes, in my humble opinion, should be used. They should be used for what they are, but they should not be misinterpreted into thinking that they are going to immediately enhance your performance. And so, like I said at the start of this video, I fell victim to that sort of that all or nothing sort of ideology, and in the early stages I thought these shoes are going to solve all of my problems, and it's not the case. However, when used in the right context, these shoes are amazing because they truly will let us know exactly where our body's current capabilities are, and then give us some information as to where we should improve our weak points. And so then we can really get the benefits out of the technology that padded footwear provide. So I hope that's given you some context as to how and why we should be using these shoes. So whether you are a runner, whether you prefer just lifting weights in the gym, whether you're like myself and like to do a mixture of the two, I believe a healthy balance of barefoot shoes and then also padded shoes, a balance between the two is really the way to go. And so the way you want to break this down for your own personal training schedule is starting really small with these shoes. So if you are currently 100% accustomed to just wearing padded footwear, and you feel like you've got some weak points in your body and need to slowly adapt over time, then like I said, just start by wearing these shoes in a safe setting such as around the home and just walking around in them, and then gradually adding in more and more complex movements. So it might be some basic plyometrics, just jumping side to side in these shoes and feeling how you land. Or it might be going for a hill walk, something like that. So you might want to go walk up a hill or go do some trail walking, for example. And just gradually over time increasing the level of difficulty in terms of movements while wearing these shoes, and just sort of making a mental note of how your body is responding. And then when you chuck on your shoes, the highly cushioned shoes, let's say you're going for a run, you'll feel like you're really flying because you're now a more efficient mover. And one last little extra note I just want to add in for the sake of this video is sort of more the feeling of these shoes. So in terms of trail running, this is one of my favorite just training practices or experiences that you can have with these shoes, because you get that ultimate ground feedback. You feel just more connected to your body and the overall sensory experience. So just running through the trails and feeling the ground and feeling the terrain, that extra level of connection is quite a unique experience. And so taking all of the technical aspects out of it, just the feeling that you get from being closer to the ground and more connected, that's a really cool experience in itself. So that's just sort of a side note I thought I would add in there. And you can get a similar feeling from walking through trails as well as as well as trail running. So I hope that's provided a bit of context for you. Be patient in your approach to building up the strength in your feet and your ankles and your calf muscles. There is always going to be this adaptation process. Everyone's a little bit different depending on what kind of footwear they've worn throughout their life and how it's shaped the way they move. So just be really slow and patient with transitioning into wearing these shoes, and even keep a journal and write down what your body is able to achieve on a weekly basis. So it might be a certain amount of kilometers that you walk in these shoes, or a certain amount of time that you spend in these shoes, or some exercises that you're working on. And then you can slowly just increase the amount of time spent in these shoes and the complexity of movements. And so I've also got some training routines on this channel that may help you out. Some are foot specific, so they are actually designed to rebuild a bit of the mobility and dexterity in the feet, so that can also help. That's something that greatly benefited me as I was learning about foot health and strength. And there's some other running specific strength routines as well that might just help you in your overall process and just getting a stronger, more resilient, more efficiently moving body. So I hope this video helps. Let me know if you have any questions or ideas on this topic, some things that I've probably missed, and something so I may make a follow-up video in the future if there's more questions surrounding this topic that I can cover. I would love to help out. If you haven't already figured out, I'm obsessed with training. I'm obsessed with all of this health and well-being sphere. So yeah, if you got any questions, hit me up, let me know, comment down below, and we'll just keep trying to help educate one another and create these cool conversations around what our body's potential is, because this stuff's exciting. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.